Well, another interesting week to say the least. I'm not going to beat a dead horse about weather because we've seen that multiple times. It's come to become something common here in Minnesota where we're going to see a yo-yo effect of weather. We saw cold weather to start the week and wind and a little bit of misty rain. We saw it get warm, and then yesterday, Saturday, we saw it get really warm. It felt great to be outside in 85-degree weather. We had shorts on. Came back home after my guide trip, and my kids are outside in the pool, swimming in a little inflatable pool, having squirt gun fights. Like, what a way to welcome May. May 1st is one for the record books in many ways, and I'll talk to you why as we go through this video. But going back to start this week, remember last week we talked about yo-yoing, change of temperatures, cold weather, then it would get warm, then it would get cold. These fish just are trying to acclimate to what's going on, and it can be tough on them, and you can find a changing bite every day, and sometimes a changing bite within a day, because you start the morning in cool conditions, it warms up, the sun peaks up for an hour, the fish start to rise out of the weeds or move up into the docks or whatever it might be in your situation. So you got to pay attention to that. It can change in a day, not just overnight. So this is the time of year where those sorts of things happen. However, finally this past week, we're finding some uniform activity of fish. You're finding some fish that actually want to stabilize their pattern, let's call it. So it was kind of fun to be out this week. I did go into Wisconsin a couple days and try to chase some bass. Did not catch a pile of them. Maybe I'm just in that crappie zone right now, because when I went to Wisconsin one of the days, I chased crappies, tried to catch some bass, struggled to catch fish, and saw a massive pike, a 40-inch pike come into my boat by Tom. Grigsby caught some muskies, trying to catch bass, and then in typical Matt fashion, I see big crappies in the shallow weeds. I want to catch them, so that's what I do. So ended up chasing crappies in Wisconsin. Similar playing field to us in terms of weather conditions, but again, we had a cold day. We're bundled up in stocking caps and gloves. It's 30 degrees out and the wind's going about 10-15 miles an hour, but that sun peaked out right around middle of the day. Water temps warmed maybe a degree or two, not a drastic change. And guess what? Those shallow areas started to have life. Fish were moving in there, and we started catching some fish, crappies, and seeing other things happening. Bluegills swimming around and bass swimming around, where 3 hours before that it wasn't happening. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again for the immediate future. If you have to pick a time of day to fish, if you're limited to, let's say, a 4-hour fishing trip, it's not the time of day where you have to be out there at sunrise. Get out there midday. The bite's the best from that noon hour on, when the water starts to warm up throughout the day, especially if you get a sunny day. You can see your best bite in the afternoon, early afternoon, when things start to heat up. And that's what we saw. Then we went to another lake and chased bass, and shallower lake, dirtier lake, more wood. Water temps, across the entire lake were much warmer than the lake the day before, and we found some bass. Again, relating to shallow, and again, as that sun progressed, we had better fishing. Our best bite by far on Wednesday, bass fishing, was 1 to 4 o'clock. I mean, we caught a few in the morning, just sparingly, really working hard to get a couple bites. And then once that sun got up and the water temps jumped a few degrees, as they like to do this time of year, the bite turned on, and we started to catch them in more places, and even spots where we didn't catch them in the morning. So keep that stuff in mind. But going back here to our metro area, where we targeted a lot of panfish the last few days, it's fun. The bite's doing its thing. It's on. We finally are having this springtime fishing that we expect with some consistency. And what I'm seeing is water temps staying in the 50s finally. And what happened, which is funny, I was out on Friday. We went to Lake Minnetonka with the Knocked Outdoors boys, Andy, Danny, and Mao. Man, was that a riot of a day. We stung and caught a lot of fish, moved quite a bit, and found a consistent pattern on probably 6 or 7 different bays. We did not spend a lot of time back in the boat channels like everyone wants to do right now, and there's still anglers back there, and there's still fish to be caught. We did go back into a boat channel to start the day, thinking that's how we should start the pattern. Caught a bunch of smaller fish, near state record dogfish, a giant dogfish, and then said, hey, let's get out of this channel. And then we started hitting main lake weed spots because we saw the temps were in the 50s, water temps were in the 50s. And we started catching fish in the main lake weeds, which is how I prefer to target them. So instead of playing bumper boats back in the channels, I said, other guys and gals can have that. We left the channels and we started targeting main lake weed flats on northern parts of shorelines. These spawning habitats that we catch fish on, you know, during the first part of May, and they were starting to move in there, except for we were catching them a little deeper. So instead of being up on top of the flat, where in a week from now you can look around and, oh, there's one, see them. We were just sliding off a bit and fishing that, you know, probably 5 to 8 foot range, you know, 5, 8, 9, 10 foot range, and where there were still weeds, and they were riding the tips of those weeds. And with that sun coming out, they were just slowly coming up in the water column. And we'd fish a hair jig and a float right above that weed line, and they'd come up and take it. Pretty exciting stuff. So what I thought was really cool this week that I wanted to share was on Friday, we fished all day, and when we left the lake, we had about 52 and a half, 53 degree water temp, and felt great. Warmest water we've seen consistently main lake this entire year. So sure, things are going to turn on. The fish are going to feed on those spots, and they did. We had a great day on Friday. Didn't catch any big fish. I don't know if we caught any crappies over 12 inches, but a lot of like 10s and 11s, and so what I would consider well above average metro area fish. So they were doing their thing, staging on these weed lines. We weren't up in 1-2 feet of water. We weren't fishing many inside dock lines, nothing like that. Main lake weeds, catching fish, having a good time. So we left the lake at, you know, 3 o'clock or whatever on Friday, and water temps were like 52, 53 degrees. Well, we had experienced our first night of the year where water temps did not drop, meaning it stayed in the mid-50s for air temps all night Friday night, and we have not seen that yet this year. It's been dropping to the 30s, heck, even 20s at night. So you see that 50, 60 degree day, maybe a little bit of sun peeks out, and then at night it drops into the 30s. Water temps drop back down again in the 48, 49 degree mark. Fish stall out, whatever. So that did not happen Friday night. And one thing we to note also on Friday is we didn't catch any fish on Friday that were dark and metallic, like they were staging and getting up for the spawn. None. We didn't catch any crappies that were looking like that. So then we get up for Saturday morning and start our day. Water temps are already 52. When we start at 7 a.m., 52 degrees already. And by the time we left Saturday, they were 56 and a half. But what I noticed on Saturday was half the fish we caught were dark and metallic. These males moved up. These females moved up. These females were full eggs. The males were beautiful. And this stuff happens literally overnight. You hear people take the term, oh, it could happen overnight. Well, it did, because we literally saw a consistency of water temp. We did not see those temps drop back down to the 40s. They stayed in 52, 53 degrees overnight, and those fish literally slid up overnight and we're chowing on Saturday, and our size went up. We were catching big fish. We got a pair of 15s, we got some 14s, we got some 13s. I mean, we were catching big ones on the same spots, literally the same spots we fished on Friday, where a big fish wasn't to be found. So it's amazing what happens literally overnight here this time of year. This is a fun time of year to be fishing. It's very dynamic. You don't know what to expect. It's, again, weather dependent. We've talked about temperature. It's still temperature and weather dependent on what these fish do. Now, once they start to move up into these spawning areas, which I think they're doing as we speak, they'll be there. They're not going to move back out. So even if we do get a little bit of a cold snap, some cool rain, cooler day like we had today, they stay. So today they're staying in the same spots, caught them in the same spots. So you can find some consistency now that they move into their spawning period. Super excited. But one thing I really want to address this time of year is let these big fish go. They're vulnerable right now. You can see them, you can catch them, they'll bite. There's a couple times a year where these big fish do this. We gotta practice selective harvest. Let these big fish go. You want to put them, hold them for a picture or do something like that. That's awesome. Be excited about what you catch, but let these big fish go. Let the big fat females go. You catch even a 9 or 10 incher, it's just ballooned out, its belly's like this. Let that fish go. I mean, that's the future of our lake. I get it. You catch a 12-inch fish or whatever, you're excited, you want to bring it home, you want to eat it. I promise you, I've cleaned a lot of crappies in my day. Let that one go and keep a 10.5 incher. You're not going to notice a giant difference on the fillet, especially if you're letting go one that's full of eggs. You got to remember, when you start talking 12 inch, 11, 12, 13 inch fish, I don't care where you fish here in the metro, those are way above average fish. Those are big fish. Big fish make big fish. So let those go. Keep the smaller ones. Still have your fish fry, and keep these lakes flourishing for years to come. So great time of year to get out fishing, getting the family fishing, get the kids fishing. Bobbers are going now nonstop. We're like I said, fishing hair jigs. Jack, my son, JJ Fishing, is making a hair jig called the Fly Bugs, and we've been fishing those. We caught over 200 fish on one jig and that massive dogfish, and it held up. I threw a picture on my Facebook page yesterday showing how mangled that jig looked, but it's still kicking, still catching fish. So hair jigs, I think, catch a pile of fish. There's a lot of anglers coming in around us as we were fishing and catching fish, not catching fish. And I don't know if they're using too big a jig, too big a bobber, big plastic, crappie minnow, whatever, but small 1/32 ounce, 1/64 ounce, small hair jigs under a float, no weight. We've shown you this in past episodes. Hair jig, no weight, all the way to the bobber. Put your weight at the bobber. So that hair jig just literally does this in the water, and then work that bait back. Your bobber should pop all the way back so the hair jig is dancing in the water, and those fish will eat it. Great way to catch fish right now. Don't need to mess with plastics. Don't need to put my hands in the minnow bucket and catch a pile of fish. So this week's going to be awesome. We're going to continue to find that same bite. I think you're going to be able to catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun. So spring is here. Welcome May. It's May 2nd. It's time to go get after them. And we're less than 2 weeks away from the Minnesota Fishing Opener. So next weekend, we're going to recap the week, of course, and then probably preview the Minnesota Fishing Opener on what to expect and what I would be throwing and some things I'd be doing to catch fish. So hopefully you're getting out there having some fun. You enjoyed that really warm weather yesterday. Back to reality today. It cooled off a little bit. Feels more like it should this time of year, but yesterday, boy, did that feel good. And we got out there and had some fun. So enjoy your spring. Go out there and catch some fish. Be safe. Have a barbecue, and we'll catch you next week.